So I'm here with Mike Pettiford from Go For It Services, which is a driving school here in Colorado. And today we're going to talk to Mike about the importance of actually improving the loosen up behind the wheel, or the driver. But before we do that, so Mike, if you could tell us just a little bit of how you started Go For It Services and kind of some of your racing background.
Well, I started Go For It Services about 31 years ago because I was dissatisfied with what they call training.
Yeah.
For both cars, motorcycles, trucks, buses, RVs, all of it. So I decided, well, you're sitting on the couch and you're watching comedy and you're like, well, I'm funnier than that guy.
Yeah.
So about 30 years ago, I decided, well, we're going to bring the real stuff. If you wonder what the top drivers in the world do, that's what we're going to teach you. If you wondered what the top motorcyclists in the world do that don't ever have accidents or that win races, that's what we're going to teach you. Okay. So that was the motivation.
Okay. And so you've raced in SCCA for a number of years, and what kind of classes do you compete in? What kind of cars do you run?
Normally we're in the T1 or T2 class.
Okay.
Last year we ran Corvettes and Turbo Solstices. Yeah. We've run Volkswagens, we've run Mazdas, we've run a bunch of different cars.
So you've got a little bit of experience with a lot of different platforms.
Yeah.
And I think you've won a championship or two, haven't you?
Yeah. I've won 40 of them.
Okay.
Which is more amateur championships than anybody else in SCCA history.
Okay. So you've definitely got some experience that you bring to the table when somebody comes to your class or takes a lesson from you.
Yeah, I mean, we know a thing or two about this.
Perfect.
And we can hopefully steer people in the right direction so that they don't make a ton of mistakes.
Well, I had a feeling that we'd come to the right place to get the best possible insight into driving, improving somebody's driving ability.
Sure.
And so to start, why would somebody want to improve their driving? So if somebody's an enthusiast, say, and they go to the track, or maybe they are not comfortable to go to the track yet, or they've gone once or twice.
Sure.
And they've just experienced what it is to drive a car at speed.
And they are in love.
And they're in love with it because it is addictive, I'll be honest.
Oh yeah.
But now that you've got that foundation, why would it be important to then improve upon the driver's abilities? Not just focus on the car.
Right.
Certainly there's things you would change the car to make it safer, more reliable.
Sure.
But you can change the driver to make them safer, more reliable.
Well, and what it comes down to is it's all about the driver. You can't have a fast car unless you have a fast driver.
Sure.
I mean, I could tell you story after story. We'll go out to the track. We're in a Subaru wagon, or we're in a Mazda Protege, or we're in something that is clearly, outclassed by a Porsche or a Corvette or a Viper, and we'll go past the guy.
Sure.
I mean, and you would think that would be humiliating enough that he would immediately call me and say, I've got to have some training because this should not happen on the track at any time. And if you're not using the limits of your car, why are you paying to improve your car's limits when you're not at them?
Well, and driving is kind of a blind spot because there's this thing in our heads that, well, I drove the car to the track, I drove the car home from the track, I haven't been in an accident in so many number of years, I know how to drive the car.
Ergo, I must be a good driver.
Well, and I guess what it is that when you start pushing the car, when you start not just getting from point A to point B, but now you're talking about point A to point B to point C around a racetrack and trying to be as fast as possible, that's a different skill set than just driving on the street, because things happen faster, the way that the car behaves is vastly different.
Well, and you have to develop a feel.
Yeah.
That's what allows you to go to the limit. If you don't have the feel, then you can only go to where you're comfortable.
Right.
And if you push beyond that, then what happens most of the time is you'll lose control of the car. Hopefully you won't get hurt and the car doesn't get hurt, but sometimes that does happen.
Sure.
And I mean, where we can save people so much money is to take them step by step by step to get that feel, so that when they reach the limit, they don't go far beyond the limit and they can stay right at the limit.
Right.
Then, once we get, their line dialed in and we get some other stuff, now they can actually go as fast as the car can go.
Sure.
And all that money that they spent on the car, now they get the benefit
Right.
of all of that.
Right. I mean, when we're trying to help somebody modify the car to make as much power as possible, often, almost 9 times out of 10, we're saying, pick the best part. Cost is not necessarily the priority. The quality of the part is the priority to get the best result.
Sure.
And when you're talking about driving, how you as the driver give the input to the car, that is also, you want to give the car the best input.
Sure.
So that you can get the best result and be as fast as possible.
Because if you're trying to set up the car and the person can't reach the limit of the car,
right.
You're setting the car up for an artificial place.
Right.
And then when they go to the limit, the car's still not going to be correct.
Sure.
So, I mean, I've seen it over and over. Somebody will go out there to the track and they are burning up tires and brakes and brake pads and
Yeah.
squealing, and they burn up the whole car. They've
Yeah.
spent all this money. Did they ever reach the limit of the car?
Right.
No.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about that, I mean, that is one of the reasons to improve the driver. Because the car, when you're giving a car input, there's one thing that you just can't win against, and that's physics. Like
That's
if you're asking the car to do something that is like really at the limit of what is physically possible, or especially beyond it, that's where you're going to start really overusing the brakes, overusing the tires, possibly overheating the engine, overusing the engine.
Yeah.
And it's because the input that you're giving the car is just, you're asking the car to do something that it just physically can't do. And that's where you start to burn up consumables.
And if you wanna fight with the car, here's a tip and a secret: car always wins.
Yes, and
100%
physics.
of the time,
Yes.
Physics always wins. The other thing is, it's amazing how much money you can save by being able to drive at 90%. I mean, you can double the life of your tires, your brake pads, your rotors, if you can just be consistent at 90%, and you can win races at that level right there.
Sure.
And I mean, I've won plenty of races at 90, 95%. I didn't have to go to 100%.
Right. You're saving the car. You're reducing the wear and tear on the car because you're just maximizing the use of the driver,
Right.
not necessarily the car.
Right.
And I can tell you, full disclosure, I have taken a lesson with Mike. We put on a lot of track days with Mike, and after that experience, I definitely noticed that, especially tires is where it's most noticeable.
Sure.
Because, if you're not asking the tire to do something that it can't do,
Right.
you're not going to wear it nearly as much. And so I definitely noticed tire wear is extended. Brakes,
sure.
certainly.
Sure.
Because if you're always over speeding or going too fast into a corner and
Right.
just jamming on the brakes every single time, your brakes fade, go through pads.
Well, and we get a lot of people that, I'll get a client that says, I got to buy bigger brakes. And I said, well, do a day with me before you buy the brakes.
Yeah.
It may not be the brakes.
Right. It's how you're applying them.
Yeah.
And it seems like it can't possibly be that. I mean, that's just, I guess, us as maybe our ego getting in the way sometimes. But yeah, I mean, how you drive a car sometimes can actually dictate how you go through things. And,
Sure.
and sometimes a lot of the problems, especially when you're talking about brakes and tires, that you can have at the track, it actually could be related to how you're giving the car input, not necessarily that the system is deficient or that the tires aren't sticky enough.
Yeah, smoothness is the name of the game.
Yeah.
If you're not smooth, you're ultimately not going to be fast. And what is smoothness? A lot of people think smoothness is doing things slowly.
Right.
No, that's fear.
Right.
Smoothness is just being able to not upset the car and go from the limit of acceleration to the limit of cornering to the limit of braking, and then back to the limit of cornering and acceleration.
Yeah. And not upset the car.
Right?
And you'd be amazed how much faster you can be doing that.
Right? And it's less dramatic.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are waiting so late to brake, they're scaring themselves silly,
Right.
fighting with the car, losing, and saying, boy, I'm glad I survived that corner.
Right.
And then they do it right, and it's like, wow, this is easier, and I'm faster, and I'm more consistent, and it's not like a religious experience
Right.
every time I go through turn 4. you
Sure.
know? So, yeah.
Well, and kind of related to that, and you touched on it earlier, is there's another benefit to improving driving skill, which is actually safety.
Oh, sure.
If you are literally right on that ragged edge every time you're entering a corner, and it's literally, a tenth of a second, a hundredth of a second difference between whether you're going to make your braking point or not because you're just pushing it so far into the corner.
Sure.
You know, the slightest delay on your part or accident on your part, that could be the difference of staying on track and making it to the next corner versus having it off.
Sure.
Or you know, pushing the brakes so hard that now you go into a corner that way, and now the brakes aren't working at 100% because they got too much heat in them.
Right.
And now you're going off because the brakes are not able to do that, you know, maximum emergency stopping that you've required them to do time and time again.
And you exceeded the braking threshold because of the driver.
Right.
Not because the system maybe couldn't handle it if the driver was smoother.
Sure.
Yeah?
And so from that standpoint, you know, if you want to go to the track time and time again, learn about the car, learn about the driver to become better, having a good foundation for really, I think one time you put it as you speak for the car, you interpret the car.
That's right. I'm the car interpreter.
Yes, because the car tells you in the driver's seat as you're trying to turn or trying to brake, it will give you actually a lot of feedback that, hey, you're getting close to the limit.
Right.
Hey, this system is at a limit.
Sure.
A perfect example would be brakes. And once you get enough heat in them, the pedal actually starts to get spongy.
Oh, yeah.
There are signs that it's telling you before you will actually have an outright failure.
And as they say, this is your final warning.
Right. And the car, there is no mercy when the system fails.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so being able to interpret that and have a foundation for, you know, what the car can do, but also just how to read, you know, where it's telling you, like, hey, you're turning too much. You know, when you go into a corner and the tires start squealing, that doesn't mean turn more.
Right.
It usually means either turn less and slow down, or other things.
It means that's all I have. You can turn the wheel as much as you want.
Right.
I'm only turning this much.
Yeah, and so once you have that knowledge that, hey, I'm getting to the limit, I'm starting to overstep what is just possible with this car. If you know that, then you can back off and you can try a different approach. But if you don't see those signs coming, that's where maybe the next corner you push beyond that, and now you lose maybe the rear end, have it off, or worse.
Well, and a lot of this you can save. In other words, if you'll back off the brakes when they first get spongy, you can save them. And then you're not going to fragment a pad, you're not going to warp a rotor, you're not going to do all this stuff that's going to cost you much more money.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's money in the pocket.
And it's a lot more fun.
Yes.
I mean, it's a lot more fun if you're able to push the car and you start to get the signs that, hey, you know, the brakes are overheating, the tires aren't grabbing anymore.
Sure.
I need to slow down, and then there's a lot less drama. You can take an easy lap or two, maybe get back on it, or come into the pits, let everything cool down, and start over again.
Sure.
Versus continuing to push and finding out, how quickly the tow truck can get out to
That's
you.
right. And then oftentimes you're done for the day.
Sure.
You know, you've hurt the car, you can't repair the car.
Right.
It's unfixable, and you probably weren't at the end of the day, so you could have had more time that you've already paid for.
Yeah, and a lot of times, if somebody watching this has not been to the track before, that's one of the fears that people have. You know, I don't want to take my car to the track because what if something happens?
Sure.
A lot of times, that what if is something that there's signs, there's information that the car will give you.
Sure.
Before something happens.
Right.
That if you just don't know, you don't see the signs, you keep pushing, and then you have a failure, and that really ruins your day. So in a lot of ways, actually improving and working on your driver's skill is a good way to make sure that you have a good day at the track.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, making sure that the car is prepared to go out to the track.
Sure.
I mean, I've seen people that have taken classes from me. They haven't checked their tire pressure in like months.
Sure.
Yeah, and they're like, it really pushes. It's a little wallery feeling. Well,
Yeah.
You go and you put air in their tire, and they're like, wow, that feels really great. Well, they can do that. That's easy.
Yes. Yeah. There's definitely things you got to make sure that are in place before you go on the track. Absolutely. Right. But one of them too is that your head is on right and you're ready to pay attention to the car.
Right. A lot of people they go in so deep under braking that they no longer believe that the car can even do it.
Right.
And then of course the line is deteriorated because they're just going to turn in and try and save themselves, and it just gets into a mechanism, and then that's what they practice.
Right.
They don't practice the correct sequence. they practice whatever they're doing and they get comfortable with an inferior sequence.
Right.
And then they wonder why they can only go, they've gotten better and better, but now they're here and they can't go any faster.
Right.
Every time they try to go faster, they lose control of the car or they hurt something on the car.
Yeah. And that's, the underlying point in improving the driver skill is it will make you faster.
Oh, yeah.
And if there's ever any question how much faster you can get by improving skill, it's actually very easy to measure. And the answer is you do a lap and you time that lap. And then you get somebody like Mike to drive your car and you time that lap and you see what the difference is.
Sure.
And I'll use myself as an example. One of the track days we did, it was at a track that I've been to a number of times.
Sure.
I hopped in the car, Mike was in the passenger seat with me. We do some laps and I was like, I feel pretty good about this. Then Mike hopped in the car and did things that just, to me, seemed like were not possible. And all of a sudden, like he's probably 10, 12 seconds a lap faster than I was. And that's, me getting out, him getting in, no changes to the car whatsoever. It's just changing the driver. So it will make you faster, all of these things too.
Sure.
But ultimately faster.
And it's all about the sequence. In that example, I'd never driven your car.
Yeah.
And this was probably on like the second lap, because I'm getting all the inputs from the car. Okay, I've got that much brake, that much traction. Okay, this much power. Okay, let's turn it up.
Yeah.
Let's go. And a lot of people have never seen or experienced fast.
Yeah.
Really fast.
Yeah.
And it changes your whole perspective.
Sure.
And you get a chance to feel that.
Yeah.
And with me, I'm narrating exactly what I'm doing, and then I'm coaching you so you get it piece by piece at your own speed, so you don't have to, be afraid, and you take it comfortably.
Yeah.
Now, when you go home, you've got this level, you came in at this level, and it's still comfortable.
Yeah.
It's not scary.
Right.
It's not like, well, I'm glad I lived through that. It's like, okay, I understand more, I feel more, I can do more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's so many benefits, but the one that we haven't touched on yet is by improving the driver. The cool thing is you're improving basically the car's performance no matter what you're driving.
Oh, yeah.
And whatever you work on the driver,
That's right.
it applies to every single car that you drive.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to buy another exhaust system because you've got that here.
Sure. Or when you do, or when you trade in your 10-year-old car and get something brand new, you've already upgraded the driver.
Exactly.
So now you can apply all that new skill set to something else.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's a lot of reasons to work on the driver is what it comes down to. And safety, it actually will make track days more fun and cheaper because you're not burning through equipment. But of course, ultimately, it makes you faster no matter what you're driving. So like, to me, that's something that if you budget money to make the car faster itself, and certainly having more power, having stickier tires, having better brakes, that will make the car faster. But
Absolutely.
improving the driver so that you can take advantage of all those things, the two of those together, that's what you need if you really want to go out and be fast and consistent.
Well, and what we do in this garage, we've got a lot of championship winning race cars.
Yeah.
And I would go broke if I didn't let the car tell me what it needed.
Sure.
If I just said, well, we're just going to do all this stuff because somebody on the internet says that this is the hot setup. Well, we go out and we look at the lap times and I go, well, the car's pushing a little bit.
Right.
And we're at the limit and we can fix that.
Sure.
And I come to you and I say, John, I need some parts.
Yep, and we fix that.
Absolutely.
But that's a great point too, is that if you are not correctly interpreting what the car is telling you as far as what's working and what's not, then it's hard to know if you want to swap parts out or change settings, whatever, it's hard to know what to do to the car to actually make it faster.
Well, and some drivers can actually drive the car stock because the car is more predictable and reacts a little slower, which works better for them than if the car is super stiff, that if you fly in Lewis Hamilton, that he would prefer it that way. Well, you're not Lewis Hamilton.
Right.
It's great. Now we've got the car set up for him.
Yeah.
He won't be coming.
Sure.
So here you are.
There's a relationship between the driver and the car.
Right.
If there's another point to be made, it's that if you have bad habits, kind of like what we were talking about a little bit before, and the changes that you make to the car are actually to correct maybe a way that you're giving the car input that's not ideal.
Sure.
Or a bad habit, if you will.
Sure.
You can kind of set the car up to compensate
Right.
for the driver, but that will only take you so far.
Right.
Because then there's a point where if you start to learn more proper way to enter a corner or
Right.
exit a corner or something,
Well,
now the
and-
car's not set up properly for proper
Exactly.
driver.
And in your travels at the track, and especially if you get into racing, you will meet a driver that can drive perfectly.
Yeah.
And his or her car is set up perfectly. They don't have to compensate for anything that the driver's doing because the driver has adapted to the car.
Right.
And that's what drivers do.
Yeah, and those are the guys that are just so fast, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, how can it be 5 seconds a lap faster than me? You know, it's in a spec class, we're supposed to be evenly matched. Like, what is he doing versus
Sure,
mine? And,
sure.
I mean, that can be the difference that a driver makes, you know, not just for driving ability, but even for car setup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people will go out and they'll read books, and it's always about the information. I'm not saying don't read and all that stuff, but you have to have a top-level driver to set up your car if you're going to set the car up at the limit.
Yeah,
And if it works at the limit, it'll work anywhere.
sure.
But if you're setting it up for 3/4 of the limit, and then you reach the limit, it's probably not going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's again, it's just building that driver skill so you can, you know, if you want to just develop the car on your own pace, you know, giving the car good input and getting good feedback from the car and interpreting it correctly, that's the key.
Yeah.
Because if you're moving in the wrong direction,
Oh, yeah.
you know, I mean, you can very quickly make the car substantially worse than it was before, and it can be real quandaries to why. Because,
Sure.
you know, it's just incorrect interpretation, miscommunication really with the car.
I've seen front-wheel drive car development that
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, no, he didn't just do that.
Right.
You know, because that's a whole different thing, trying to get the car to rotate and still
Yeah.
be stable. That's,
Yeah.
you know, the challenge there.
Yeah.
Or all-wheel drive cars with a power bias that's more 50-50 instead of to the rear.
Right.
Now you've got the same understeer or push problem that you have in a lot of front-wheel drive cars.
Sure.
So yeah,
That's definitely a problem that Subarus have, is they, you know, the stock set up and without doing some reasonably significant changes, I mean, they really behave almost like a front-wheel drive car.
sure,
Yeah. So, and again, it's being able to know that.
right.
Like, how do you know that? Well, being able to correctly interpret how the car is behaving. That's how you figure that out, and then that's what guides the setup, and then that's when you start to get faster.
Well, and a lot of people don't know what a properly handling car should feel like because they've adapted to whatever their car does.
Sure.
I've had people that they're driving one type of car and then they'll drive my car and they're like, wow, this thing really turns in. Well, yeah, that's when you turn that wheel, guess what the car is supposed to do?
Sure.
It's supposed to turn.
Yeah.
And if you have to fight with it and if it doesn't do that, then perhaps an adjustment either with the car or with the driver is in order.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So, yeah.
and a lot of times when depending on the project, like if I'm doing an engine build or something like that, a lot of times we recommend professional installation.
Sure.
You know, talk to somebody that this is what they do.
That's right.
Well, it turns out for car setup, that is also a piece of the puzzle to an extent. Is, you know, getting somebody in the car that is a professional,
Sure.
Such as yourself, to like this is definitely what the car is doing here and there, and this is what needs to be done to correct it. That can just that little touch can put you so far ahead,
Oh, yeah.
so much more quickly
Oh, yeah.
than trying to figure it out yourself if you're just not really sure how to interpret the input that the car's giving you.
Yeah, I mean, you're saving time, you're saving money. You know, you can do in a day with a professional driver what it could take a week or weeks or not ever being able to accomplish the task at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what it ultimately comes down to is you got to make the car better, but you can't forget about the driver. You got to make the driver better too. And in doing so, you're going to make the car better. You're going to be faster. You're going to have more fun.
absolutely. And that's really what it's all about because the amount of fun that I have going out with any of the cars here, I mean, and I love to drive other people's cars too to process the information, but it's just amazing. I mean, you know, when you have, like I said, a Subaru wagon that is passing Porsches and Corvettes and whatever, and you know.
Which Mike has and has done.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole new level of cool.
Yes.
You know, so.
That's one of the fun things about taking a Subaru to the track is passing somebody and then having them come up to you in the paddock afterwards and, what is that? You know, what have you done to that car? How is it that you went past me? That is probably one of the greater joys that is in a track day, short of actually, you know, winning a race or something.
Yeah. Well, because a lot of people, they bought the car, but they spent all the money on the car and they didn't spend any money on the driver.
Right.
Because until that moment where they saw the rear of that Subaru wagon, they thought they were driving very well.
Yep. Well, it can be an eye-opening experience, let me tell you.
But it's all about the fun.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, thanks very much for watching. If this video helped you, please drop a like and stay tuned for more Flatirons Tuning Tech Talk.
Thanks. See ya.